Mysteries of the Maya. Unveiling of Secrets. Samael Aun Weor. 2nd edition, Colombia. They were watchful in the things of God. They had only one God, they had him as one only God. They invoked him, they pleaded to him. His name was Quetzalcoatl. And so respectful were they in the things of God, that everything that he said to them, their priest Quetzalcoatl, they fulfilled it. They did not deform it. He said to them, he instructed them, that unique God, Quetzalcoatl is his name. He demands nothing but serpents, but butterflies, that you must offer to him, that you must sacrifice to him. Codis Matra Tense. 1. Atlantis. Let's start by remembering the old continent called submerged Atlantis. In the ancient Egypt of the pharaohs, the priests of Sais told Solon that Atlantis was destroyed 9,000 years before speaking with him. The Atlantean civilization has not yet been surpassed by our vaunted modern civilization. They knew atomic energy and used it in war and peace. Atlantean science had the advantage of being linked to magic. Extraordinary robots were manufactured and certain types of superior elementals controlled these robots which, being well endowed with intelligence, seemed human and faithfully served their masters. Any robot could inform the owner of the dangers facing him and, in general, many things of practical life. The Atlanteans possessed machines so powerful and wonderful, such as one that could telepathically convey precious intellectual information to the mind of any human being. Atomic lamps illuminated the palaces and temples of transparent walls. Sea and air ships were powered by nuclear energy. The Atlanteans learned to degravitate bodies at will. With a small device that fit in the palm of the hand, they could lift any heavy body, no matter how large. The god Neptune ruled Atlantis wisely. The most sacred temple of the holy god was something to admire. The silver walls and partitions of the temple amazed with their beauty, and the domes and roofs were all solid gold of the best quality. Ivory, gold, silver, and brass could be seen inside the temple of Neptune with all the royal splendors of ancient times. The gigantic sacred sculpture of the highly revered and very sublime god Neptune was all pure gold. That ineffable mysterious statue, mounted on his chariot drawn by beautiful exotic respectable steeds and surrounded by 100 nereids, infused a deep veneration in the minds of the Atlantean devotees. Atlantean cities were flourishing while their inhabitants remained faithful to the religion of their parents, while they fulfilled the precepts of the god Neptune, and while they did not violate law and order. But when holy things were profaned, when sex was abused, and when they were stained with the 7 capital sins, they were punished and immersed in the bottom of the ocean. The priests of Sais told Solon, all those heavenly bodies that move in their orbit suffer disturbances that eventually determine a periodic destruction of earthly things by a great fire. The Atlantean continent stretched and was oriented toward the south and higher sites to the north. Its mountains exceeded in greatness, elevation, and number all those that currently exist. The famous story of the flood, whose versions are in all human traditions, is a simple memory of the great Atlantean catastrophe. All primitive religious teachings of America, all the sacred worship of the Incas, Mayas, Aztecs, etc., the gods and goddesses of the ancient Greeks, Phoenicians, Scandinavians, Hindustanis, etc., are of Atlantean origin. The gods and goddesses mentioned by Homer in the Iliad and Odyssey were heroes, queens, and kings of Atlantis. Atlantis geographically united America with the Old World. Ancient Indo-American civilizations have their origin in Atlantis. The Egyptian, Inca, and Maya religions, etc., were the primitive Atlantean religions. The Phoenician alphabet, the father of all European alphabets, is rooted in an ancient alphabet that was correctly transmitted to the Maya by the Atlanteans. All Egyptian and Maya symbols come from the same source, and thus the similarity is explained. It is too great to be a coincidence. The Atlanteans had a metal more precious than gold called orichalcum. The catastrophe that ended Atlantis was terrifying. There is no doubt that the result of breaking the law is always catastrophic. The time of the submersion of Atlantis was really an era of geological changes. Other firm lands emerged from the deep bosom of the seas, forming new islands and new continents. Some survivors of the Atlantean disaster took refuge in the small continent called Grabonzi, today Africa, which increased in size and extension because other areas of the mainland, which emerged from the neighboring waters, joined it. The Gulf of Mexico was once a beautiful valley. The islands of the West Indies, the Canaries, and Spain are pieces of submerged Atlantis. The ancient sea Hideous, located just northwest of the continent then formed and known as Ashark, Asia, changed its name and is now known by the name of the Caspian Sea. The coasts of the Caspian Sea are land formed by the surface of the ocean that joined the continent of Asia. Asia, the Caspian Sea, and all along that block of land, is what today is known by the name Caucasus. The block at the time was called Frianct Sanarali and later Colli de Schissi, but today, I repeat, is called Caucasus. At that time there was a great river that fertilized all the rich land of Tikliames and flowed into the Caspian Sea. That river was called then, and still exists, Oxyceria, but it no longer flows into the Caspian Sea due to an aftershock that diverted it to the right. The rich water flow of the river rushed violently through the most depressed area of the continent of Asia, giving rise to the small Aral Sea. The ancient bed of the old river, now called Amudarya, can still be seen as a sacred witness to the course of centuries. After the third great catastrophe that ended Atlantis, the old country of Tikliames with its formidable capital on the banks of that river was covered, along with all its towns and villages, by sand and is now only a desert. At the time, unheard of for a Cesar Cantu and his universal history, there was another beautiful country in Asia known as Mariplaci. This country and Tikliames traded, and there even existed much commercial competition between them. Later, this country of Mariplaci came to take the name of Globandia, due to the great city of Gob. Globandia and the powerful city of Gob were swallowed by the desert sands. Among the desert sands off Gob, very rich Atlantean treasures are hidden, powerful machines unknown to the Aryan race. Occasionally the sands expose all these treasures, but no one dares to touch them, because anyone trying is killed instantly by the gnomes who are their caregivers. Only men of the great Karadi sixth race, who in the future will inhabit this planet, may know these treasures, and that in exchange for right conduct. Many traders of pearls were saved from the Atlantean catastrophe, taking refuge in Palandia, the country known as India. Occultist students are filled with deep horror when they are reviewing the akashic records of nature and find facts such as the ones we relate next. Students recall that beautiful woman named Kate Bet, the sad memories of the queen of the southern countries of the submerged continent and the mighty city of the Golden Door. There does not really exist in the history of the Borgias and Medicis such perversity. That beautiful woman enthralled with her beauty and necromancy, seduced princes and kings with her charms, and fascinated them with her raptures. Many teenagers and children were immolated on behalf of the timbrous entities of the nether world. The Atlantean priests of that time discovered what today we call scientifically human opotherapy, that is, the application of glandular juices like pituitrin, thyroidin, adrenaline, etc., to the sick and decaying. Dr. Priests not only used the chemistry of these endocrine glands, but also the hyperchemistry of such glands, the vital psychic fluids of the chakras or magnetic centers of the human body, which are closely related to such endocrine centers. After being removed from the sacrificial stones, the victims of immolation were taken to certain secret chambers, where Dr. Priests extracted from the bodies the precious endocrine glands so necessary to preserve the body of the fatal queen, along with all the charm and beauty of a youth that endured the weight of many centuries. The scariest part of that was that the priests, after removing the glands from the cadavers, threw them to fanatical crowds who, debased and thirsting, devoured them. Thus, those people became cannibals. Reflecting on all these things, we are frightened and horrified, but all these barbarities remain small and seem even ridiculous when compared with the atrocities of the First and Second World Wars, or with the appalling atomic explosions of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. All Atlantean barbarity pales compared to the gas chambers where millions of people, women, children, and the elderly, deprived of their garments, died in infinite despair. We are horrified by Atlantean bestiality, but 1,000 times more horrific were the bombings of London, the concentration camps, the gallows, and the criminal cities destroyed by bombs, disease, hunger, and despair. Never before in history was there greater perversity than that of the fifth Aryan race, outdated and degenerate. Just as Atlantis was submerged with all its inhabitants in the bottom of the ocean, so this Aryan race will be destroyed and not even ash will remain. Let it be known once and for all that of all this that humanity so much esteems and admires, not one stone shall be left upon another. 2. Races. Every planet has 7 races and 7 sub-races. Our Earth has given 5 races, with 2 still to come. After 7 races, and having been transformed by cataclysms, the Earth will turn over millions of years into a new moon. All involuting and evolving life came from the moon. When the great life abandoned the moon, it died and became a desert. On the moon there were also 7 races, each with its 7 sub-races. The soul, or lunar life, is now devolving and evolving on our planet Earth. This is how worlds reincarnate. The Aztecs say that the men of the first race were extraordinary giants of a black color. They were a very civilized androgynous race, asexual, semiphysical, and semi-etheric. Individuals could reduce their size to that of a normal person of the current Aryan race. Their rituals and wisdom were portentous. Barbarism did not exist at that time. This race was devoured by the tigers of wisdom. The regent of this race was the god Tezcatlipoca. Each individual was a master of wisdom. Reproduction was performed by the fissiparous act, similar to the reproduction system of organic cells through the process of cell division. Thus, the father-mother body was divided into 2. The androgynous son was held for a while by the father-mother. The first race lived on the sacred island, located in the North Polar Cap. This island still exists but in a jinn state within the 4th vertical dimension. The second race was ruled by Quetzalcoatl. It was the Hyperborean humanity. The second race degenerated into monkeys, the ancestors of current monkeys. They reproduced by the process of budding, so common in plants where a trunk sprouts many branches. They were destroyed by hurricanes. The third race was the Lemurian race, who inhabited what is now the Pacific Ocean. They perished, destroyed by a sunrain of fire, volcanoes and earthquakes. This race was ruled by the Aztec god Tlaloc. Reproduction was by budding. Lemuria was a vast continent. After they degenerated, the Lemurians had bird-like faces, looking wild. Recalling the tradition, they adorned their heads with feathers. The fourth race was the Atlanteans and was ruled by the Aztec god Atenacia. It ended with a great flood. The pre-Columbian tribes of America are descendants of this race, as are the primitive Chinese and primitive Egyptians, etc. Fifth race, the Aryan, us. It will end with a great cataclysm. It is perfectly described in the Ahorcatan, which is the 13th that is counted, Kabalixbak Chachalaka, Kinchil-populated Koba, and the solar face of Chachalaka is the seat of the 13th Khatan. The lords of the earth shall blacken for the universal justice of God our Lord. He will turn the sun, and the face of the moon will turn. First subrace, it flourished in Central Asia, in those now lost kingdoms whose ruins still exist in the Himalayas and around the Tibetan country. The powerful civilizations of the first Aryan subrace existed there. Second subrace, she flourished in India and throughout South Asia. In Palandia, the sacred land of the Vedas, in ancient Hindustan, there were formidable esoteric cultures and tremendous civilizations. There, the second Aryan subrace unfolded. Third subrace, it created powerful civilizations. Babylon, Chaldea, Egypt, etc. were the scenes of very rich and powerful civilizations created by the third Aryan subrace. Fourth subrace, it developed in Rome, Greece, and Italy. Athens was the great city founded by goddess Athena. Before their degeneration and destruction, these were the wonderful stages where the powerful civilizations of the fourth Aryan subrace developed. Fifth subrace, the Anglo-Saxon and Teutonic. The First and Second World Wars, with all their barbarism and moral corruption, point an accusing finger at the men and women of the fifth Aryan subrace. Sixth subrace, it is a mixture of Spanish conquerors with the Indo-American tribes. The work of forming the sixth subrace in the territory of the Redskins was very difficult because the English conquerors, rather than mingling with the natives, destroyed and murdered them. Only in a very insignificant and incipient form was such a mixture of blood made. This is why the occult fraternity saw the need to convert the territory of the United States into a melting pot of races. In the United States, all races of the world have mixed to form the sixth subrace with huge difficulties. In Latin America, the sixth subrace formed easily, and this is something that writers of anthropogenesis and occultism should not ignore. Seventh subrace, it does not yet exist, but it will. It will consist of the survivors of the new great cataclysm that will soon destroy the Aryan race. Just as with the Atlanteans, the Aryan race, instead of evolving, has regressed, and its corruption is now worse than that of Atlantis in its time. Its evil is so great that it has reached the heavens. The Aryan race will be destroyed so that the prophecies Ramu made in submerged Atlantis are fulfilled. If they forget that they must be higher, not by what they acquire but by what they give, the same fate will touch them. Melchizedek, the genius of the earth and king of the world, made the following prophecy in Tibet. Men, or better said, rational mammals, will increasingly forget their souls to deal only with their bodies. The greatest corruption will reign on earth. Men will resemble ferocious beasts, thirsting for the blood of their brothers. The crescent is falling from its adherents in perpetual war, the greatest misfortunes will fall upon them and eventually they will fight each other. The crowns of kings, great and small, will fall, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. A terrible war will explode among all peoples. The oceans will roar. The earth and the bottom of the seas will be covered with bones. Kingdoms will disappear, and entire villages will die. Hunger, disease, and crimes not covered by laws, unseen or even dreamed of by men, will occur. Then will come the enemies of God and the divine spirit, who lie within men themselves. Those who raise their hands over another shall perish as well. The forgotten and the persecuted will rise up later and attract the attention of the whole world. There will be thick fogs and horrible storms, mountains that until then had no vegetation will be covered by forests. The whole earth will shake. Millions of men will exchange the chains of slavery for humiliation, hunger, pestilence, and death. The roads will be filled with crowds of people walking from one side to another. The greatest and most beautiful cities will disappear by fire. Out of 1, 2, 3, or 10,000 men, only one will survive who will remain naked, stripped of all understanding, without the strength to build housing or to find food. And these surviving men will howl like ravenous wolves, they will devour corpses and, biting their own flesh, will challenge God to combat. The whole earth will be deserted and even God will flee from her. On the empty earth, night and death. Then I will send a people unknown until now, the World Salvation Army, which with a strong hand will start weeding the field of vice and lead the few who remain faithful to the spirit of man to the battle against evil. They will found a new life on an earth purified by the deaths of nations. Maya-Egyptian relations. The Maya themselves represent the Atlantean culture. That vast continent today lies submerged at the bottom of the ocean that bears its name, for Atlas was their king and the most ancient of astrologers. The poetic mind of the children of Hellas pretended that he was agent who supported the celestial machine upon his back, though in reality, he supported it with his powerful mind. His children, the Titans, tried to climb to the sky, but God confused them. One night, the sea and thunder roared. Europe vibrated, tremulous, awakened by the roar, and the brother world was seen no more. Only Mount Teed remained to say to mankind, here once stood the famous Atlantis. Every race has 7 subraces and then dies. The 4th Atlantean race also had these subraces. Pride grew in the third and fourth Atlantean subraces, and they said, "We are the kings, we are the gods." They took wives who were fair to look upon but belonged to a race with narrow minds or heads, engendering monsters, evil demons, and both male and female beings with poor minds. They built temples for the human body and paid cult to males and females. Then, the third eye, the eye of intuition and double sight, ceased to function. They built beautiful and huge cities, carving their own images according to their size and likeness, and these they worshipped. Internal fires had already destroyed the land of their parents, Lemuria, and now water threatened the fourth race, Atlantis. The first great waters came, submerging 7 major islands. The good were saved and the bad destroyed. Few men were left, some yellow, some brown, some black, and some red. The color of the moon, the tuata, had gone forever. We transcribe below a Mayan manuscript that is part of the famous collection of Le Plongeon, the Troano manuscripts, which can be seen at the British Museum. In the year 6 Khan, on the day 11 Muluk in the month of Zag, terrible earthquakes occurred which continued without interruption until 13 Chorn. The country of the hills of mud, the land Ofmu, was sacrificed. After 2 shocks, it disappeared during the night, being constantly shaken by subterranean fires, which caused the earth to sink and reappear several times in different places. At last the surface gave way and 10 countries were separated and disappeared. 64 million inhabitants sank 8,000 years before the writing of this book. In the ancient archives of the old temple of Lhasa, Tibet, there is an ancient Chaldean inscription written 2,000 years before Christ, which literally says, "When the Star of Baal fell into the place where now there is only sky and sea, the Atlantic Ocean, the 7 cities with their golden doors and transparent temples trembled and quivered like leaves of a tree moved by a storm. And behold, waves of smoke and fire rose from the palaces. The screams of agony from the crowd filled the air. They sought refuge in their temples and citadels, and the sage Mu, the priest of Ramu, presented himself and said, 'Did I not predict this?' The men and women, covered with precious stones and bright garments, cried out, saying, 'Mu, save us,' and Mu replied, 'You will die with your slaves and your riches, and from your ashes new nations shall arise.' And if they, referring to the 5th Aryan race, forget that they should be higher, not by what they buy, but by what they give, the same fate will touch them." Flames and smoke choked the words of Mu, and the earth shattered and plunged with its inhabitants into the depths in a few moments. What can critics say to these 2 stories, one from Tibet and the other from Mesoamerica? Both relate the Atlantean catastrophe. The famous story of the flood, versions of which are in the traditions of all human races, is a simple memory of the great Atlantean catastrophe. All ancient peoples revered and worshipped the holy gods who lived in Atlantis and who today dwell in the Empyrean. Atlantis geographically linked America to the Old World. The civilizations of Indo-America have their roots in the Atlantean continent. Just before the Atlantean catastrophe, the select people were taken away. Some came to Mesoamerica and others to the central plateau of Asia. They colonized Tibet, Persia, Egypt, etc. Located in Egypt, there are still Mayan pyramids. There is full documentation that the Master Jesus learned Mayan in Tibet and spoke Mayan. For proof, we have the phrase pronounced on Golgotha. It is a Mayan phrase that the Jews misunderstood because they did not speak Mayan, Heli Lama Sabachthani. The Jews said he was calling for Elijah, to see if he would come to save him. How would they understand? In rigorous Mayan, Heli Lama Sabachthani means, "I hide in the dawn of your presence." It has been established that the science religion known by Jesus Christ in Egypt, India, and Tibet was Mayan. There was a profound Mayan occultism certainly known by Christ, who chose Mayan symbols as the base for his ideas of fertilizing love. It cannot be a coincidence that he chose the Mayan cross, the Trinity, the 12 apostles, and many other symbols to support the immense sense of his scientific and religious preachings. The Atlantean Maya brought their religion, science, and wisdom to Mesoamerica, Tibet, India, Persia, Egypt, etc. They were the great civilizers. There have been 12 Khatuns, and the 13th Khatan is expected in the year 2043. Henceforth, the final catastrophe is inevitable for the Aryan race, which now per parcella populates the continents of the world. Copan 13 is definitive. The Maya await. An old Maya was asked, "Will your child see it?" He responds, "No, my son will not see it." "Will your grandson see it?" "My grandson will see it." So, with Copan 13, Herculubus will arrive and produce the great universal fire that will burn everything that has life. Later will come the revolution of the axis of the earth, with the total absolute sinking of all continents that exist. This rotten Aryan race that perversely populates the continents will not leave behind even ash. Only a small, select group of people will be saved to serve as the seedbed for the future sixth great race, which will be called Karadi and will settle in what is now the polar cap. This perverse Aryan race is perfectly described in Mayan Copan 13, "It shall perish by fire." With the total revolution of the Earth's axis, the water will eventually consume everything, washing everything away until it remains at the bottom of the sea. Venerable Master, is it true that the Maya traveled throughout the solar system? The Maya, as Atlanteans, traveled the solar system. Rockets led by Mayan scholars made these portentous voyages. The ships were powered by nuclear energy. The Maya are great scientists and they remain in secret, with all their science. I do not mean the Maya who publicly appear in America, I am talking about the Maya who live in the parallel universe, the fourth dimension of this planet. They retain their magical cities, continuing with their same habits and the same science, dedicated to their studies and calculations. There are Mayan cities within the fourth dimension, the fourth coordinate, or the fourth vertical dot. They have wonderful temples of solid gold that the Spanish did not take, where they keep the great ancient wisdom. It is clear that modern scientists know nothing of this, nor will they admit it, but what does that matter to science, and what does it matter to us? Description of Stella 6, a dev of nature. Within the vision of the harmony of all things, we discover with mystical astonishment the spiritual part of nature. In other words, we find the famous Malachim one, or angelic kings. Direct contact with elementals must always be performed through the intercession of the following angelic kings of the elements within the marvelous sphere of the causal world. Earth, fire, air, and water each have their particular god. Unquestionably, the gnomes or pygmies who dwell beneath the earth have their hierarchy. The particular genie of the gnomes is Gob, a very special deity known in high magic. The specific kingdom of the gnomes is situated in the north of the earth. They are commanded with the sword. The specific kingdom of the Indians is situated in the west. They are evoked with the cup of libations. One may concentrate on Tlaloc or Nixa. The kingdom of the salamanders of fire is situated in the south. They are commanded with the magic trident. One may concentrate on Michael, king of the sun and thunderbolts, Samael, king of volcanoes, and Ael, prince of the astral light. The kingdom of the creatures that populate the air is situated in the east. The sylphs are commanded with an eagle's feather or with the holy pentacles. This is known by the magicians. One may concentrate on Parvati and Zabtabiel. The elimination of the animal ego is imperative to be fully served by the elements of nature. A rushed and capricious person will never govern the sylphs of the air. By no means could a bland, cold, and voluble person be the absolute boss of the Indians and Nereids of the water. Anger irritates the salamanders of fire. In fact, gross concupiscence converts those who want to be served into toys for thegnomes or pygmies of the mineral kingdom. When the magician has died within himself, in other words, when he has eliminated even the very shadow of the memory of his defects, then all of nature will serve him, obey him. During a tempest will wander without the rain touching his head. The wind will not mess a single pleat of his suit. He will cross the fire without getting burned. He will walk upon the boisterous waters of the ocean without sinking. He will see with complete clarity all the treasures that are hidden in the bosom of the earth. Remember the words of the great Kabir Jesus. The works that I do shall he do also, and greater works than these he shall do, John 14:12. The world of natural causes or conscious will is the world of the Malachim or angelic kings of nature who constitute the legitimate spiritual principles of the elements. These beings or terribly divine, ineffable gods are perfect human beings in the most complete sense of the word. Such beings are beyond good and evil. Stela 6 represents precisely a dev, an angelic king. It tells us about an extraordinary esoteric culture that existed in Copan. The Mayan culture is unique in its kind. The mitre is very much destroyed. We can appreciate 3 horizontal lines that indicate the 3 superior forces. The crown of victory, the triumph of the ascending energies, is shown. The very well done belt with complete ornamentation indicates Hod and Yesod. This stela represents a deity, an elemental creature of nature, a dev. The Masonic apron is very well chiseled. 1. Hebrew, literally, kings. The singular form is Melech. 1. One of the classes of angels or sanctified souls. Related to the Sapphira Tiferet. Corresponds to the Christian hierarchical level, virtue, and principality. 2. In the world of Yetzirah, Tiferet receives the name of Malachim. Description of Stela 5. Cross of St. Andrew Stela 5. Countenance, strong mitre, very damaged. We can see the 3 forces of creation, arms, upwardly placed, indicating the ascension of the positive and negative forces. Intriguingly, Asmal, central, faceless figure appears between the 2 arms, clearly indicating the human soul, the true human being, the causal man. In this way, any written explanation is very advantageous. The small central, faceless figure addresses the emotional center, the profound center of the consciousness. The ornaments on the arms are profoundly significant liturgical bracelets, Sephiroth on the tree of life. Sephiroth on the tree of life. The right arm indicates chaste. Chesed means mercy or loving kindness, the 4th Sapphira of the tree of life. Related to the atmic body, the innermost, the inner spirit, our own individual divine father. Also named Gedula, the left arm indicates Gebura. Alternatively Gevura, Gebura means severity or power, the 5th. Sapphira of the tree of life. Also called in related to intuition, justice, the spiritual soul, buddhi, etc. Everything is very well portrayed with the Hebraic Kabbalah. Gebura is the rigor of the law. It is hound with dazzling clarity. In its center, the small figure indicates the human soul, Tiferet. Also Tiferet means beauty or compassion, the 6th Sapphira of the tree of life. The human soul waist, it shows a magnificent belt, the Hod of the sages. Hod means glory, majesty, splendor, the 8th Sapphira of the tree of life. The astral world or astral body. We see the X cross or cross of St. Andrew on each end of this perfect and marvelous belt, as if stating, cross the Mercury and the sulfur so that the solar man can be born within you. Mercury is a symbol in alchemy of the sexual power. Arnold of Villanova, Albert the Great, Raymond Lully and many other alchemists give the designation of Mercury to the sperm or semen. There is only one matter that serves as a foundation for the great work of the Father. This raw matter of the great work is the sperm, which is designated as Mercury by the alchemists. Unquestionably, the Mercury of the wise must be fecundated by the sulfur. In other words, by the fire. In regard to Yesod, Yesod means foundation. It is very well depicted, very well ornamented, so as to indicate to us the necessity of working very hard upon ourselves. The 9th Sapphira of the tree of life. In the macrocosmic universe, Yesod is the 4th dimension. In the microcosmic universe, Yesod corresponds to the sexual organs and to the ethereal body. In the Bible, Yesod is Eden, the promised land. The problems of thesis and antithesis are resolved with the synthesis, which is the wise management of positive and negative forces. The cross of St. Andrew explains the work to be performed in the 9th sphere with the sulfur and the mercury. Sulfur is a symbol in alchemy of the sacred fire or kundalini, the hard struggle to attain the elimination of all the psychological aggregates based on conscious works and voluntary sufferings. Andrew, the hermit fisherman, humbly served the Christus John, when he then became a disciple of the great Kabir Jesus. Andrew assisted the great Gnostic priest Jesus of Nazareth in the miraculous fishing off lake of Genezareth or Ginesareth, the symbolic Jinn lake where the fire performed so many portents. The extraordinary torture of Andrew, filled with enigmas and portents, made the cross X very famous, upon which his separated limbs were tightened in a pitilessly way. The deep significance of the torture of Andrew on the terrible X is the annihilation of the adored ego in the laboratorium oratorium of the third logos. Description of Stella E, the alchemist's work. It is very noteworthy that all the sculptures of Copan have the rod, the scepter, carved in the center. In Mexico, when sculptures have a carved scepter, they have it at the side or not at all. So, this is what makes the sculptures in Copan remarkable. They are clearly indicating that the power, the scepter, is located in the center. On Stella E, the inferior part of the rod is a little destroyed. Yet, on the superior part of the rod we notice an intercrossing of lines in a superposed way, having the shape of an X, which is profoundly significant in alchemy. The crossing of the mercury with the sulfur to perform the great work was known in the ancient Aztec as well as Mayan mysteries. Stella E at the Copan archaeological site in Honduras. What is the mercury of the wise? Well, this is the metallic soul of the sacred sperm, the exiohihari. The mercury is prepared by means of transmutation, in other words, by means of the transmutations of Yesod, so that it will be ready to receive the sulfur. The sulfur is the fire. Therefore, when the sulfur and the mercury are fused, totally integrated, they ascend throughout the medulla canal off the depth. Consequently, the sulfur and the mercury, in their ascension throughout the medulla canal, open the distinct centers or powers that divinize the human being. Precisely, this is indicated by the intercrossing of the rod on its superior part. It is obvious that, in the ancient mysteries, the one who attained the development of the superior part of scepter was the one who had accomplished the work, thus he was a master. At each side of the scepter we see the positive and negative forces very well symbolized. The mitre is very high. Two little figures are shown that have, we cannot exactly say, a human face. Their contours are rare strange. Anyhow, these are nothing other than the two witnesses referred to in the Apocalypse of St. John. Stella E indicates that through the dominion of the sulfur and the mercury we can attain the possession of the philosophical stone, which will allow us the right to use the priesthood mitre. Stella E clearly explains the alchemist work. Description of Stella 1, an adept. The countenance is grave, with a resemblance of a beard. The hands indicate the ascent of forces. The belt is very well adorned on the part of Yesod and Hod. A face is shown on the part of the sexual organs. This represents the third force or Holy Spirit. From the Kabbalistic point of view, we know that the two arms indicate chaste and Gebura, love and law. The scepter, although very much damaged, is always at the center. It indicates the work in the ninth sphere. Jinn practice. The logos expresses as verb, as sound. There is a golden language that the human being should speak. Before the human being departed, exiled from the Jinn paradises, they only uttered the verb of gold, the great universal language, which was the perfect grammaticism. When wanting to visit the Garden of Delights, the great Egyptian hierophant submerged into profound meditation while holding in their right hand a nut known by the name of deer's eye. Invia. This mantra becomes a true invocation. Under this mantra's influence, the elemental of that nut assists with resisting. This elemental has the power of placing the physical body in a jinn state, meaning, to submerge it in the fourth vertical. When the hierophant felt that his body started to inflate or to be swallowed from the feet up to the head, then he comprehended that his body had acquired the jinn state. Thus, he rose from his bed, filled with faith, and submerged into the Garden of Delights. He transported himself to any place on the earth through the fourth dimension with the elemental of that nut named deer's eye. There is a great master of the jinn science named Ogwara. He invariably responds to the call of those who invoke him, and he helps them to submerge their physical bodies within the fourth dimension. Description of Stella C, the stone of self-realization. We see 4 faces in this stela, which is how the tetragrammaton is represented. The first face shows us Adibuddha, the unknowable, the unmanifested, the one who does not enter into creation. The second face is represented by the 3 forces, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, which do enter into creation. Adibuddha is the father of our Father. Jesus named him You, and he said of him, the Father of my Father. You, the unknowable, the unmanifested, never enters into manifestation. Subsequently, the Ancient of Days manifests and becomes the first enfoldment of You, who is the unmanifested Adibuddha. Consequently, the Son followed by the Holy Spirit appears. So, the Trinity emanates directly from Adibuddha, the unknowable. So, on Stela C, we clearly see this. On the highest part of this stellar a semblance of a face is shown, yet it is faded and is noticed only by paying a lot of attention. It is faded in order to provide understanding about the unknowable. This stela is a very well adorned theological piece. On its waist, on the part of Hod and Yesod, we see magnificent adornments. The belt indicates that there is a need to work hard, to dominate the lower passions or animalistic instincts, in order to grasp the scepter of command, the scepter of the kings. Its hands in that position indicate the necessity of directing upwardly and inwardly the totality of the creative forces. Pay attention to wisdom, and never, ever forget that each one of us is the final outcome of the distinct unfoldments of the tetragrammaton. The work in itself is perfect completion. On its head, we see how the work glows when one attains perfection by means of it. The mitre on its head, the belt on the region of Hod, the astral world, and the scepter of power on the center, Yesod, clearly tell us about the perfection of a human being that has attained self-realization. But what is the inner realization of the being? Let realization of the self be understood as the harmonious development of the infinite completeness of human possibilities. Realization of the self is not about intellectual data capriciously scattered, nor is it about mere, insubstantial wordiness of ambiguous chatter. Everything that we are saying must be translated to authentic, lived, and real experience. In the name of truth, we solemnly declare that the being is the only real existence, and before his ineffable and terrible, divine transparence, that which is called I, ego, or myself is merely exterior darkness, weeping and gnashing of teeth. To know ourselves and become realized on the horizon of infinite possibilities implies the entering into the creative host of the Elohim. Description of Stela N. Coatlicu. Omiticutely, omisihuatal. Lord and Lady of Duality. Om, 2, Tekutli, Lord Serpent. Om, 2, Siwatl, Lady Eagle. The entire universe emanated from this masculine and feminine, dual principle. According to the Nahuatl, this god and goddess had 4 children, the 4 Tezcatlipoca's. Zipito Tex, the red. Tezcatlipoca, the black. Quetzalcoatl, the white. Huitzilopochtli, the blue. The 4 colors of the 4 races that presently populate the world were born from this divine and invisible binary. The creative forces of omiticutely omisihuatal express themselves during the sexual cenobium. They descend into the organs of human procreation with the sole objective that a new being can manifest in the physical plane. If man and woman are united only by desire, if they are impelled only by the animalism of spilling the semen, then the solar forces of the man and the lunar forces of the woman sink into the atomic abysses of the earth, and both are converted into slaves of the abyss. However, if love impels that union, and there is no fornication in the sexual caress, then the precious feathered Quetzali serpent awakens within them, and converted into Quetzalcoatl, ascends towards its place of origin. This is how the couple becomes divinized. At the threshold of the sanctuary of the temple, the masters present to the initiate a book, within which all the laws of the Divine Mother are written. Before that book many withdraw, filled with terror when knowing that they must annihilate the personality. Few are those who pass the ordeal of the threshold of the sanctuary. Those who do pass it receive a heavy ring of fine gold, a symbol of power. The initiate must die in order to be, but previously he has to return into the bosom of the Divine Mother. He must practice sexual magic with his chaste spouse so that he can be spiritually born. Whosoever does not know the laws of the Mother will never reach the Father. Coatlicue is none other than the Blessed Mother Death. Stella N. As an alternative of the four hands shown by the Mexican Coatlicue, here, this stela points towards the four natural forces, fire, air, water, and earth. Its face has a very well done skull. The mitre has very noticeable adornments. It does not lack a scepter in its center, indicating power. Practice. Meditation is the bread of the wise. The wise meditates when in search for God, information, or power. There are 5 clues for meditation. 1. Comfortable posture. 2. Serene mind. 3. Concentration. 4. Introversion. 5. Ecstasy. 1. Comfortable posture. Concentrate on your physical body and attentively examine it with the eyes of your soul. Prove that you are not that marvelous body, and discard it from your mind by saying, I am not my physical body. Thereafter, concentrate on your ethereal body, identify it, and after having attentively observed its luminosity, which, protruding from the physical body, forms a multicolored aura, discard it also from your mind by saying, I am not the ethereal body. Immerse more within yourself, and concentrate first on your astral body, and thereafter in your mental body. These 2 bodies, astral and mental, are the 2 columns Jachin and Boaz of the Masonic temples, and their fundamental base is the cubic stone of Yesod, the ethereal body. Concentrate on these 2 bodies, and after proving that you are neither of the 2, but that they are 2 more instruments of expression, discard them from your mind by saying, I am neither my astral body nor my mental body. Discard from yourself your 4 bodies of sin, and pass between Jachin and Boaz, the 2 columns, white and black, of the temple that is your living body. Upon these 2 columns is written, with characters of fire, the password INRI. Disarrange it into 2 syllables, and vocalize them one after the other as follows. I-I-N-N-N-N-N-N-N. I. Subsequently, without your 4 material vehicles, walk off and wander throughout the world of the mist of fire. Return into the body to keep working, and concentrate anew in the black column of your living temple. This is the astral body. Now try to listen the sharp chirp of the cricket that is the essence of the lost word, INRI. Thus, without ceasing to listen to the sound emerging now from within your brain cells, concentrate on the white column, your mental body. Keep meditating, and concentrate on the body of willpower until becoming conscious of it, and after having proved that this is another of our vehicles of expression, discard it by saying, I am not the body of willpower. Now, we absorb ourselves within a little more, we concentrate on the body of the consciousness, identify it, and see that it is only another vehicle of expression, discard it by saying, I am not the body of the consciousness. Then, we would ask, who am I? Thus, a silent and sweet voice will answer, you are me, the innermost. I am the reflection of the Self-Christ. You and I are one. In those moments, identify yourself with him, feel that you are him, and say to yourself, I am he. I'm he. I am he. When reaching this state of consciousness, pronounce mentally the mantra Panda as follows. Pan and Diro. This mantra will help you to become identified with your internal Christ. Through this daily introversion, you will achieve the awakening of your consciousness to such a degree that during sleep you will act within your astral body with the same naturalness and lucidity as when you are within your physical body. Then during the ecstasy, due to your sincerity and devotion, you will be allowed to visit the nuclei upon which the universe is based, which allegorically look like holes, in order to contemplate the divine majesty of the Absolute. Intense practice awakens the internal centers. Description of the staircase of hieroglyphics. The hieroglyphic stairway climbs the west side of structure 10L26. It is 10 meters wide and has a total of 62 steps. Stela M and its associated altar are at its base, and a large sculpted figure is located in the center of every 12th step. This sculpture is a clear allusion to the 12 tasks of Hercules. The 12 tasks of Hercules, prototype of the authentic man, point to the secret pathway that leads us through the degrees of perfect master and great elected one. First task, capture and death of the lion of Nemea, the strength of the uncontrollable instincts and passion that devastates and devours everything. Second task, destruction of the Hydra of Lerna, symbolic monster of immortal origin, endowed with 9 threatening heads that regenerate each time they are destroyed, menacing the herds as well as the harvests. This polyphacetic Hydra can be interpreted as an allegorical image clearly personifying the mind with all its psychological defects. Third task, capture of the Serenitian stag and the boar of Mount Erymanthus. We can see in the Serenitian stag, golden horned deer with bronzed hooves, a clear illusion of the human soul, the superior manas of theosophy. In the terrible boar, perverse as no one, is the living symbol of all the lower animal passions. Fourth task, the extraordinary cleaning of the famous stables of Augeas, king of Elis, whose daughter knew the virtues of the plants and prepared magical beverages. These stables are the living representation of our own submerged subconscious depths that host innumerable herds, those multiple psychological bestial aggregates that constitute the ego. Fifth task, hunting and killing the anthropophagous birds that tenebrously inhabited the Stymphalean lake and that killed men with their sharp bronzed feathers which, like deadly arrows, they hurled against their defenseless victims. Sixth task, the capture of the bull of Crete. Seventh task, capturing the mares of Diams that were killing and eating castaways who reached the coasts of the Bistones, a very warlike Thracian people. An allusion to passionate, infrahuman elements that are profoundly submerged within our own unconscious abysses, symbolic beasts grazing alongside the spermatic waters of the first instant, they are always ready to devour the failures. Eighth task, to eliminate the giant thief Cacus, the evil thief who, hidden within the tenebrous cave of human infraconsciousness, treacherously squanders the sexual center of our organism to satisfy his brutal animal passions. Ninth task, the conquest of the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of Amazons, an allusion to the feminine psychic aspect of our interior nature. 10th task, the conquest of the flock of Geryon, after having killed the watchdog Orthrus and Eurythian, by killing the monster who confronted him. 11th task, the theft of the golden apples from the garden of Hesperides, the nymphs daughters of Atlas, living representation of the planet Venus, the delectable star of love. Evidently this former task has a fine relationship with the biblical narratives about the Garden of Eden and the fruits of the tree of the science of good and evil. 12th task, the taking of the Trisopite dog, Cerberus the guide dog, the sexual instinct, from their Plutonian dominions that kept it, read The Three Mountains by the same author. 7 centers marvelously protrude on the center of the staircase. These have an intimate concordance with the 7 magnetic centers of the human being's dorsal spine. It is pretty clear that these are the same 7 churches of the Apocalypse of St. John. 7 chakras and churches. 7 chakras and churches. Starting from the base towards the top, in other words, from the coccyx to the head, these churches are Church of Ephesus or Muladhara chakra. This chakra is situated exactly at the base of the spinal column, at the very root of our genitalia between the anus and the genital organs. This center awakens by means of the practice of sexual magic, in other words, when man and woman copulate without ejaculating their semen. This chakra is fundamental, since it nourishes with its energy the other centers. The Kundalini is found enclosed within this center. For nadis similar to lotus petals emanate from it. The 7 planes of cosmic consciousness are found beneath this magnetic center or Church of Ephesus. The mantra of this chakra is Bur. The mantras of sexual magic dos awaken the kundalini. The root of good and evil is found in this center. Many say they are apostles, and are not, because they are fornicators. The chakra Muladhara is related with Prithvi. The one who totally awakens this center acquires the elixir of long life and preserves the physical body for millions of years. The Kundalini grants us the knowledge of the past, present, and future. Church of Smyrna or Svadhisthana chakra. The yogi acquires multiple powers or siddhis in accordance with the awakening of his superlative consciousness. In the internal worlds, the word time is a synonym of esoteric degrees of the consciousness. This chakra is the abode of the tattva apas. The elemental genie of the water, Vayuna, is related to it. It has 6 marvelous petals that shine with the fire of the Kundalini. Its mantra is Bhuva. The one who awakens this center learns how to handle the elemental creatures off waters and knows the distinct astral entities. Death is conquered with the awakening of this chakra. It is situated 2 fingers below the solar plexus. It controls the kidneys, abdomen, and the organs of the inferior part of the abdomen. Church of Pergamus or Chakra Manipura. Pergamus is situated in the epigastrium, slightly above the navel. The hepatic and splenic plexuses enter into activity with this center. This is the Chakra Manipura. Tenedis emanate from this center. It has a resplendent fiery color. It is related with the tattva Tejas. Agni must be invoked with the mantra Ramswa so that he can help us awaken it. This chakra is the telepathic center or brain of emotions. The mental waves of people who think of us reach the solar plexus, then they pass into our brain. Therefore, this is a receptive antenna. The pineal gland is the transmitter center. All the energy or solar forces that nourish all the plexuses of the human organism are gathered by this center. Dominion over the fire is acquired with the Chakra Manipura. Church of Thyatira or Chakra Anahata. This chakra is situated in the region of the heart. It has a living red color. A jet-colored hexagonal space is situated within this center. This chakra is related to Vayu, the tattva of the air. Its mantra is SSSSSSSSS. One becomes an absolute boss of the air and can dissipate the hurricanes and govern the winds by will when one learns how to meditate on this center. To float in the air is easier than to drink a glass of water. It is simple. It is enough for the disciple to learn how to enter the astral plane with his physical body. Practice. Let the disciple become slightly slumbered, then get up from his bed with a lot of softness as if imitating a somnambulist. In other words, keep the slumber state as if it were a very precious treasure. Thus, the disciple walking as a somnambulist, filled with faith, will jump with the intention of floating within the surrounding environment. If the disciple achieves floating in the air, it is because his physical body has entered the astral plane. Then, he will be able to go to any place of the earth through the infinite space. Thus, this is how the physical body can fly throughout the astral plane and remain submitted to the laws of the astral plane, yet without losing its characteristics. What is important is to have faith, patience, and tenacity. Church of Sardis or Chakra Vishuddha. Sardis is situated in the region of the creative larynx. It is the Chakra Vishuddha. It is marvelously related with the Akasa tattva, the ethereal element. This tattva has an intense blue color. It has 6 beautiful petals. It looks like a full moon. When one practices meditation on this chakra, one can even sustain the physical body during the cosmic night. Whosoever meditates in this center can know the most elevated esotericism of all the sacred books and can reach the grandiose state of Trikalajnana. In other words, someone who can know the past, present, and future. Its mantra is Han, and the yogi utilizes it during full meditation. The powers are flowers of the soul that sprout when we have sanctified ourselves. For each step that we walk in the development of the chakras, we must also walk 1,000 steps in sanctity. With esoteric exercises, we just prepare our garden so that our marvelous chakras may sprout with their aroma of sanctity. The chakra Vishuddha is related with the creative word. The most difficult thing in life is to learn how to control the tongue. At times, to speak is a crime, and sometimes to be silent is a crime. There are felonious silences, there are iniquitous words. Church of Philadelphia or Chakrajna. It is situated between the eyebrows. Its mantra is Om. This is the chakra of clairvoyance or psychic vision. The plexus of this chakra is a lotus flower that emanates from the pituitary gland. This gland is the page and light bearer of the pineal gland, which is where the crown of saints, the lotus of 1,000 petals, the eye of Dharma, the eye of intuition, is situated. We have taught the mantras and practices for the chakras of the spinal column, yet we must not forget that the plexuses also have their mantras. The powerful mantra Feuin Dagj makes all the plexuses to vibrate. What is important is to prolong the sound of the vowels. The vowels E, A, O, and R are located in the following order. I. Frontal plexus. A. Laryngeal plexus. O. Cardiac plexus. O. Solar plexus. R. Or pulmonary plexus. The one who learns how to meditate in the chakra ajna acquires the 8 major powers and the 32 minor powers. The psychic clairvoyance is an open door before you, but it is necessary for you to acquire a little strength, and to keep the word of the Lord in order not to fall in the hour of temptation. Church of Laodicea or Chakra Sahasrara. This is the so-called crown of saints, the abode of Shiva. It is related to the pineal gland. The crown of saints has 12 stars, which are the 12 faculties of the soul. There are 24 angelical atoms in the brain that represent the 12 zodiacal signs. These atoms marvelously and blazingly shine when Devi Kundalini opens this center. This chakra has 1,000 petals. The 24 atomic elders represent the wisdom of the 24 elders of the zodiac. The 24 elders of the zodiac are dressed with white garments and seated upon the throne of our brain. The atom of the father is situated in the root of the nose. This is the atom of willpower. The 7 serpents ascend by means of willpower, by dominating the animal impulse. The atom of the sun is in the pituitary gland, whose exponent is the atom nous, the son of man, in the heart. The angelic atom of the Holy Spirit shines in the pineal gland, within the chakra Sahasrara. The atom of the father governs or controls the right ganglionic cord Pingala, within which the solar atoms, the positive force, ascends. The atom of the sun governs the Sushumna canal, within which the neutral forces ascend. The atom of the Holy Spirit governs the Ida canal, within which the negative forces ascend. Therefore, it is related with our creative sexual forces and with the rays of the moon, which are intimately related with the reproduction of the races. Each of the 7 chakras from the spinal medulla is governed by an angelic atom. The 7 thunders are the 7 notes of the lost word that resound within the 7 churches of our spinal medulla. Therefore, this staircase is an open book that indicates the difficult and narrow path one must tread to reach the great light. It is also indicating to us the profound subconscious levels, etc. Description of Stellar M. It is found at the base of the staircase, and even when it is much damaged, it indicates that only with the profound man can one reach the final liberation. The mitre is high, indicating the great priesthood. The face is unrecognizable, damaged. Its hands, even when damaged, indicate the ascendant course of the sexual forces. The central lambel is showing us a figure, which is a clear illusion of the true causal man. The scepter is very well done, yet it is damaged by time or by human barbarism. Just because it is placed there, at the base of the staircase, it is telling us about a great Mayan master, a deity, a priest. Description of Stella H, the priestess. Stella H. The face of this deity has a completely hieratic countenance. Her mitre carries all the characteristics of the true priesthood. She is omnipotent, marvelous. The form of her ears indicates the verb, the word. The pectoral that rises from the center of her chest until practically connecting it with her ears indicates that the true man, Tifereth, the human soul that is in the center of her chest, must know how to understand the verb, the word, the sapience, the wisdom. Her hands are indicating the ascendant forces. In the center between her hands there is a human resemblance, a profile that clearly signifies the true man, the causal man. The scepter appears like the other stellars, however here we notice a change because it reaches the belt, which in Hebrew corresponds to Hod. Hod in Hebrew corresponds to the astral world. This same thing is applied to all the sacred scriptures of all nations. The central rod, scepter, rising until connecting with the belt indicates the work with Hod and Yesod to convert us into workers of the great work. The aspect of this stela is feminine. At the sides of the scepter or central rod, the famous cross of St. Andrew is appreciated. When this cross carries the rose at its center, it becomes the rosicross. The rose represents the logos. The X represents the mercury and the sulfur necessary for the great work of the Father. The order of the logos, the true rosicross, does not have a visible or tangible organization in the physical world. It does not have a physical temple. This only exists in the superior worlds. The brethren of the Rosicrucian order who have physical bodies here in this tridimensional world are all resurrected masters. They are resurrected masters who already incarnated the Christ. Those who call themselves Rosicrucians from distinct schools and orders in this physical world are false. The true Rosicrucian order that the Logos has established upon the face of the earth does not have any visible organization, it does not dictate courses by correspondence, nor does it collect fees, nor does it have juridical personality, nor does it have internal or external statutes. Their members are not even acquainted with each other in this physical world. They might be acquainted with each other in the superior worlds, yet in this physical world they very seldom encounter one another. All of them are capable of transmuting lead into gold and making diamonds of the best quality. All of them are self-realized masters. The cross is 100% sexual. For the rose or the logos to blossom on the cross, it is necessary to have died within oneself completely. This is to have Christified oneself totally. The vertical phallus connected with the formal ctius makes a cross. Therefore, those who call themselves Rosicrucian, it does not matter from which denomination, are reprofaning a grandiose, sublime, and sacred thing. It is the same as saying I am God, since that title is for gods and not for common and ordinary people. Only those who have Christified themselves, those who already are perfect masters or adepts, can enter the Rosicrucian order that the Logos has established upon the face of the earth. Therefore, those organizations that call themselves Rosicrucians in this physical plane are false again. It is as saying I am God, so it is a blasphemy, it is pride, profanation. Thus, they are false and have nothing of Rosicrucianism but the name. The true Rosicrucian order is for resurrected masters, for the resurrected, defunct ones who now have the living Christ in their interior. We have given these explanations in relation with the 2XS found on Stella H. These are very important. The belt indicates the upward ascension of the energies. Again, the face that appears in the center, between the two hands, clearly indicates Tifereth, the human soul. Description of Stella F. Stella F. The mitre is much damaged by time or by human barbarism. We appreciate a pectoral that rises to its cheeks. It correctly indicates the soul of things, the being. The arms that reach the center of its chest always indicate the two ascending forces. The Masonic apron that covers its sexual organs is much appreciated on its waist. A face is shown on the superior part of the apron, indicating the third force. A precious belt with the X embossed on it is much appreciated. The work that every Mason, every Masonic architect, must perform to reach mastery is shown on the posterior part of this stela. One must work upon oneself according with the learned teachings, according with the taught esoteric education. It is necessary to study the doctrine and to perform the work. Practice. The great Mayan initiates live within the fourth vertical or fourth dimension. There is where they have their temples and marvelous cities. If we want to investigate this, here is the precise clue to do it. On a loaf of bread the following mantras must be written: Senasangorora Gobadon, just as written below Gobadon, Senosanagorora. Thereafter, the loaf of bread must be eaten. The mantric words must be written as a cross with pencil or ink. When we investigated within the superior worlds to find out the scientific and esoteric value of this clue, we found the following. Once, while gathered with a group of brothers and sisters, we effectually fell asleep by means of focalizing that mantra, thus we've abandoned the physical body and entered the astral plane. There, we inquired about this clue and were astonished by the outcome of our investigation. We saw a sea where a terrific god of the ocean shook the immeasurable depths of the sea in such a way that ethereal waves were formed, which, while spinning in a concentric manner, were menacingly precipitated towards the place we were gathered. This terrific god had provoked an electrical whirlwind, an ethereal hurricane, an inconceivable force, to precipitate it towards where we had left the physical body. So, when we pronounce the mantra Senasangorora Gobadon, that ineffable God will come to our call, and will submerge our physical body into the fourth dimension. Description of Stellar 1, the Solar Man. Stellar 1. It has a solar countenance. We can appreciate the mitre on top of its head, which is equivalent to the mitre the pontifices use in this day and age. The mitre has always represented the logos. The fact that this stela is displaying a mitre clearly indicates that it represents a great Mayan priest, since it is impossible to conceive a lunar creature with a mitre. The two upward arms indicate the positive and negative forces that must flow inwardly and upwardly. They can only flow like that within a higher initiate. The wrists are adorned with liturgical bracelets. Its circular-shaped ears, displaying a dot in the middle, clearly indicate the necessity of listening to the verb, the word, the voice. Remains from fish, shells, coral fragments, and clay pots were found underneath this stela. We know very well the significance, the symbolism, of the fish. The fish symbolizes the mercury of wise. The sulfured mercury is the sacred sperm, properly transmuted. The mercury itself is always represented by the pure waters of life, yet the fish represents that the mercury is now prepared, that it has already received the fire, that it has been fecundated to victoriously ascend through the medulla canal of the Gnostic ascetics. The fragments of coral indicate the philosophical stone. The seashells indicate the mercury that has not yet received the sulfur, which means the fire. The clay pots represent the esoteric work needed to become a solar man. These clay pots are the hermetic cups. Description of Stela A, Rosh Elohim. This stone in itself is very much magnificent, extraordinarily symbolic. We see on its mitre, in triangle shapes, the tetragrammaton. These are represented in the form of little steps. What is the tetragrammaton? Answer. First step here, Buddha, the unknowable, the unmanifested. Each one of us has our own unknowable and unmanifested Buddha. Second step, the three aspects, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, which belong to the manifested Creator demiurge. These are the four forms of the tetragrammaton. This is why the pronunciation of this word is tremendously powerful. Eliphas Levi stated that when we pronounce the word tetragrammaton, and this is how we've evidenced it, faces appear, from within all the corners and places of the universe, that want to know who is the bold one that dares to pronounce the name of the Eternal One in vain. The word tetragrammaton must never be pronounced in vain, but only with a purpose, i.e. to receive special assistance. The purpose of its representation on this stela is to indicate to us, remember the three forces of creation. The head of the Ancient of Days, marvelously chiseled, appears on top of the mitre. Further back, an apparent kind of human semblance appears. It is very daring. This is indicating something about the unknowable Siti. To be more precise, this daring human semblance indicates a Buddha. Resuming, we see then, the Ancient of Days and another kind of human head, a kind of semblance why these, it is a little blurred, indicating a debuda. Arms, we see two arms directed upwardly, they indicate the two forces, and a kind of scepter, which symbolizes the neutralizing third force, the force of the Holy Spirit, very well related with Hod and Yesod. A face or little figure is visible below on the superior part of the scepter. The scepter is undoubtedly based on the sexual energy, which must be elevated inwardly and upwardly, a very cognizant labor. This stela is clearly showing us the two ganglionic cords known in the East with the names Ida and Pingala. These are the famous two witnesses of the apocalypse, whose mission is to make the sacred oil of our semen rise towards the brain. The braids on this stela are clearly indicating this. The ears indicate to learn how to listen to the verb, the word, the voice, the sound. From the Hebraic point of view, this stela could be called a Ruach Elohim. It symbolizes a priest, a god who worked in those lands of Copan teaching the solar esoteric knowledge. There was an avatar in Honduras who taught and formed a group of solar humans and disciples, who left their books in stone for this humanity. These sculptures are so valuable that there will never be others like them, who will be capable of chiseling them. Each stela is a book in stone that speaks for itself about the grandiosity of the universe. Each monument existed previous to the era of Jesus of Nazareth. These stelas are very ancient, they come from the Bronze Age. Their origin is Mayan Atlantean. Description of Stela D, the animalistic ego. Stela D. Its face appears with a mask. The ears are chiseled in that way to indicate that we must learn how to listen to the teachings, the word, to know how to pay attention to what it is saying to us. The attitude of its hands is very well known among high initiates. The attitude in which they appear on the stela, hands over the chest, fingers touching each other, applies very much to meditation. On the center of its chest there is a magnetic point, known in the Hebraic Kabbalah by the name of Tifereth, the region of the soul. This is enough reason to comprehend why these deities have their hands over their chest in the clear attitude of meditation. The scepter is a kind of formidable rough, heavy bar with two lateral wings, which gives us the idea of the caduceus of Mercury of the wise, in other words, the positive and negative forces. The bar itself represents the third force, the creative energy, which is the force that can carry us to the realization of the intimate self, the being. It is the force employed for the great work. The scepter also gives the idea of the double-edged axe. In these moments, the case comes into memory of what in esotericism is often spoken about, the hermaphrodite lumberjacks. This is an order of perfect androgynes or alios. They are called lumberjacks because, with their axes, they chop trees that personify, typify, or, better said, symbolize our errors from the past. Let us here clarify that when we talk about hermaphrodites, we are talking about perfect androgynous beings and not about those degenerated homosexuals of this day and age. We find on this stone a very vivid illustration of the work that we must perform in ourselves in relation with the disintegration of the ego. We see here with completely dazzling clarity the Hebraic doctrine of Judas Iscariot, the disintegration of the ego. Judas Iscariot is not, as many think, a man who betrayed his master. No. Judas Iscariot performed a script taught by his master, and that is all. Jesus of Nazareth himself prepared him, and Judas learned this script by memory, thus, consciously, he played his role in public. The doctrine of Judas signifies the elimination of all our psychological aggregates, death to the ego. Therefore Judas hung himself, to indicate that the ego must be reduced to ashes. Judas followed a script, and nothing else. He prepared himself conscientiously to not contradict at all the sacred scriptures. Just as any actor performs his role, Judas rehearsed it many times before performing it in public, and nothing more. Judas is and continues to be the most exalted disciple of Jesus of Nazareth. Judas achieved Christification. Some animal figures can be seen on this stela. These are a vibrant representation of our psychological errors. There is an urgent necessity of working on the death of the ego to liberate the essence, the consciousness, the Buddhata. The mitre is very damaged, but still shows the idea of the three forces: holy affirmation, holy negation, and holy conciliation. Description of Stela B, Mayan Tlaloc. Stela B. This stela shows Tlaloc, the god of rain. The simple fact it is carrying a mitre clearly tells us about the great priesthood, an initiate, a great priest. The attitude of its hands indicates the region of Tifereth and the necessity of orienting our energies inwardly and upwardly. The pectoral on the zone of Tifereth, on the center of its chest, with two upward angles towards its cheeks, indicates that we must pay attention to deep, animating principles of our being, which are what really count. The Mayans knew the esoteric mysteries in depth. Each sculpture indicates this in itself. We can appreciate the guacamayas one at its sides, a clear symbol of chastity. The guacamayas also represent sulfur and the mercury of the wise. To provide a better explanation about sulfur and mercury, let me tell you that the sacred sperm must be transmuted into creative energy, which, impregnated by fire or by becoming one with the fire, rises through the dorsal spine. This is the igneous serpent of our magical powers. The entire work is based on mercury and sulfur. Without them, the great work cannot be performed. On this stela, sulfur and mercury are very well represented by the pair of guacamayas. These were made by initiates who knew what they were doing. We can see that the initiates who chiseled these stones knew esoteric culture in depth. In other cultures, sulfur and mercury are represented in different ways, such as by the unicorn and the horse, by the eagle and the fox, by the two fish of the constellation of Pisces, by the two colossi of Rhodes, etc. All these allegories are nothing more than the sulfur and mercury of which the alchemists from the Middle Ages often spoke. Mercury is the metallic soul of the exio-hihari, the metallic soul of the sacred sperm, which must receive the fire in order to rise. It is the sulfured mercury that rises through the medulla spinal canal, opening the chakras, the magnetic centers of the human being. The surplus of sulfured mercury crystallizes in the astral body, it gives life to the astral body thereafter, it crystallizes in the mental body, and finally it crystallizes in the causal body or body of conscious will. Whosoever possesses the physical, astral, mental, and causal bodies receives the animistic and spiritual principles, and becomes a true human being. Before having them, one is an intellectual animal falsely called a human being. The face and shape of any intellectual animal's physical body looks like the physical characteristics of a human being. However, if the intellectual animal's psychological processes are observed and compared with the psychological processes of a human being, we then find that they are completely different, totally distinct. Sequentially, in the sacred texts of ancient cultures, mercury and sulfur are represented in different ways. Here in this stela B, they are represented by the two guacamayas, which are also a symbol of chastity. The scepter is wisely placed in the center. An undefined, strange, and unusual face is displayed. It is placed on the superior part of the scepter, as if indicating the marvelous neutral or third force. When the scepter is oriented towards the waist, towards Hod and Yesod, it indicates, in Hebraic terms, the neutralizing force. Indeed, it is the third force that is necessary to learn how to drive, how to control, because this is the force that gives power. The two witnesses of the apocalypse, revelation, are on the sides of the dorsal spine, while the third force is in the center. The two witnesses put the third force into activity. This is the sacred ray of Kundalini. The scepter of command belongs to the third force. Here on this stela, it is very well explained with that very strange, very neutral face. The chiseling of this stone is extraordinary. It has been done with admirable perfection. Stones as rich as these cannot be bought, not even with all the gold of the world. As artistic work, they are very impressive. They give the idea of a figure and a mantle at the same time. Back of stela B. Posterior part of stela B. We see a figure that, with his hands, is distributing the beneficial rain. This little figure's seated position is a Buddhist attitude. There is no doubt that it is necessary for all the universal floods to fall upon us to totally clean and purify us. Thus, this is what the Mayan Tlaloc from Copan indicates. In synthesis, all of these stelas are very antique carvings. They are made by artists, by geniuses endowed with an extraordinary wisdom, which they pour within these books of stone that clearly speak to use about the realization of the inner self, the being. Tlaloc. Who is Tlaloc? He is a king of nature. He is a perfect creature who is beyond good and evil. Inundation, drought, hail, ice, and lightning are in his hands, reason enough for the fright that ancient magicians had of his wrath. One day, while in a state of profound meditation, I came in a direct contact with the blessed Lord Tlaloc. This great being lives in the causal world, beyond the body, affections, and the mind. I experienced the tremendous reality of his presence in all the parts of my being. Exotically dressed, he looked like an Arab of ancient times. His countenance, impossible to describe with words, incomparable, looked like lightning. When I reprimanded him for the crime of having accepted many sacrifices of children, women, men, elders, etc., Tlaloc also appears among the Aztecs and we were referring to those sacrifices, his answer was the following: that was not my fault. I never demanded those sacrifices, those were things from the people there in the physical world. Thereafter, he concluded with the following words: I will come again in the age of Aquarius. Unquestionably, within a few years the god Tlaloc will reincarnate. Practice. When rain is required for the seed beds of certain tribes of America, they unite their members, assume the position of the toad, and imitate it. Thereafter, they emulate in chorus the croak, and the outcome is not long in coming. Ancient magicians called upon the Indians from the rivers and lakes, or the genii of the clouds, or the Nereids of the boisterous ocean. They exclaimed with a great voice, pronouncing the following mantras: Vaya, Valala, Vayala, Hayala, Vaya. Therefore, Tlaloc is a god, a deva from the causal plane. You can also invoke him, but you must do it with faith and reverence. Description of Stela P, the Trimurti. Stela P. This stela is a living representation of the Trimurti. 3 superimposed faces are displayed to indicate the holy Triamatzikamno. It is the superior Trimurti, Kether, Chokmah, and Bina of Hebraic Kabbalah. Its arms are very well adorned, directing the inward and upward ascension of the forces. Between the 2 arms is a face that indicates the causal man, the true man. Its belt is very well adorned. A face is on the region of Hod, which indicates the astral world, the astral body of the human being. The astral body is a vehicle of expression through which divinity can manifest itself. Much has been stated about the astral body, however the intellectual animal falsely called a human being does not have an astral body. Instead, he has a body of desires, a molecular body, and that is all. Conventionally, that molecular vehicle is inaccurately called the astral or astral body. If indeed we long for the birth of Christ within our own heart, then we need to create an astral body. The sexual hydrogen T12 is the final outcome of the transformation of food within the human organism. Hydrogen T12 is the matter with which sex works, it is our seed or fruit. It is clear that this sexual hydrogen is processed in the human organism according to the 7 notes off musical scale, from do to T. However, with the help of Mythuna, sexual magic, the arcanum A.Z.F, the hydrogen T12 can pass to do on the next superior octave. The second superior octave is produced in the sexual union of man and woman during the Mythuna, without the ejaculation of the ens seminis. This is how a new, independent, luminous, and resplendent organism is developed. This is very different from what the deceased use. This new organism is the astral body. The astral body is born from the same semen, from the same substance, from the same seed that originates the physical body. The only thing that differs is the procedure. The inner depth, the vitalism of the cell is saturated with the hydrogen T12, Thus, when all the organic cells are totally saturated and impregnated with that sexual hydrogen, then that substance crystallizes in splendid form of the astral body. This process is known in alchemy as the transmutation of lead into gold. Indeed, only the individuals who have an astral body live consciously within the internal worlds, as much as during the sleep of their physical body as after death. The molecular body of desires is cold, phantasmagoric, and unconscious. This is the vehicle that the deceased use after death. The astral body is a vehicle, a luxury that very few human beings have. It is splendid, marvelous. The angels and the masters of the White Lodge use it. It is obvious. Therefore, the astral body is a splendid crystallization of hydrogen T12.